My name is Dorothy Mae Parker, but inside the store they call me Miss Dot with the mop. Like I'm a cartoon made in a children's book instead of a 67-year-old woman who used to sign million-dollar contracts before people decided to stab me in the back and toss me in the bargain bin of life. If you're watching this, go ahead and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to imagine which state my attitude is offending today. Anyway, let me take you back to the night everything snapped back into place. Black Friday, one of the biggest supermarkets in America, and me, wearing a polyester vest and pushing a mop bucket through hell. 2 years ago, nobody called me Miss Dot. They called me Vice President Parker. I was the VP of Operations for Starline Markets, a national supermarket chain with stores in 30 states. If you ever walked down a gleaming aisle, marveled that the avocados were suddenly on sale the exact day you craved guacamole, or wondered how 8 trucks of frozen turkeys all arrived before Thanksgiving without crashing into each other on I-95, thank me. That was my life. I knew supply chains better than I knew my own family. I could look at a spreadsheet and tell you which store manager was padding labor, which regional director was cooking their numbers, and which vendor was trying to slip in a price hike like it was seasoning. 30 years of Black Fridays, Christmas rushes, blizzards, hurricanes, and that one time a forklift driver knocked over an entire pallet of mayonnaise. You have never truly suffered until you've dealt with 2,000 broken jars of mayo. Entire warehouse smelled like the devil's egg salad. And then my protégé decided I was in his way. His name was Chad Benson, which tells you most of what you need to know. He was 38, shiny, ambitious, and the kind of man who called women ma'am in a tone that sounded like a slur. I trained him. I showed him how to read the numbers behind the numbers, how to walk a store and see the story in the mess. I bragged about him to my daughter like I'd personally reared the boy. I thought he was the son I didn't get right the first time. Dorothy, you're the backbone of this company, he used to say. We'd fall apart without you. The thing about being the backbone, though, people forget it's there until they want to transplant it into someone younger and cheaper. Turned out Chad had friends in high places. Friends who liked words like restructuring and fresh leadership and unfortunate but necessary transition. Also turned out he had something else, access. One morning I walked into my office with its ugly framed appreciation plaques and my coffee mug and the little photo of my daughter and grandbaby and found 2 people from HR sitting there instead. I knew before they opened their mouths. Dorothy, they said gently, like they were delivering condolences at a funeral. We need to talk about some anomalies in the vendor contracts. Anomalies, I repeated. What kind? They slid a folder across the desk. My signature, my name, on purchase agreements and pricing changes I'd never seen in my life. Did you authorize these? They asked. I picked up the papers. Wrong handwriting around the margins. Wrong phrasing in the emails attached. But the e-signature was mine. Somebody been busy, I said. HR did that little sympathetic head tilt they must learn in a seminar. Internal audit found a pattern, Dorothy, they said. Vendors getting sweetheart deals. Prices moved off the books. It could be a simple oversight, but the board is very concerned. Let me tell you something about corporate concern. It always points one way downhill. I asked for time, for a full internal investigation, for digital forensics, because I knew in my bones someone had messed with my access, and I had a pretty good idea who knew my passwords and habits. But by then, the whisper campaign had started. Dorothy's slipping. Dorothy's been cooking the books. Dorothy's playing favorites with suppliers. They put me on administrative leave, which is a cute way of saying go home and wait while we decide how hard we're going to throw you under the bus. By the time the investigation cleared me legally, my job was gone. We've decided to move in a different direction, the letter said. My position was eliminated. Operations would be restructured. 2 months later, my former protégé Chad was promoted to Chief Operating Officer. My eliminated role magically reappeared with a new title on his shiny LinkedIn profile. And my pension? Funny story. Apparently, all that mess had unsettled the board, and they reevaluated long-term benefit commitments. Translation, they froze the plan, gutted the health coverage, and handed me a thin little payout that barely lasted through the year. My daughter, Lisa, tried to help. She really did. But she had a toddler, a mortgage, and a husband who spent money like it was a disease he could cure by throwing it at electronics. I refused to be another bill. So at 65, after a lifetime of running national operations, I ended up where a lot of invisible older women do, doing the work nobody sees, at hours nobody wants, for wages nobody respects. I became a night shift cleaner at Megamart Supreme, one of the largest supermarkets in America. The irony did not escape me. Megamart Supreme wasn't just any supermarket. It was a cathedral of consumption. We're talking 24 lanes, 2-story ceilings, an in-store bakery, electronics, clothing, pharmacy, seasonal Halloween haunted house, and a coffee counter that charged $7 for milk with attitude. On an average Tuesday, it was busy. On Black Friday, it was war. Now, I need you to understand something about Black Friday in a massive supermarket. People think of electronics stores and malls, but grocery supercenters were the front line of chaos. People stock up on everything they forgot to buy the week before Thanksgiving. They crash through the doors at midnight looking for discounted TVs, cheap air fryers, and the holy grail half-price spiral hams. By then I'd been there long enough to know the routine. Corporate pushes insane promotions. Management cuts labor to control costs. Shelves are crammed to the point of collapse. Pallets sit in the aisles. Safety protocols get temporarily relaxed. And the cleaner? The cleaner is the one swabbing up the busted jars, the spilled blood from the fight in frozen foods, the tears from the toddler meltdown in aisle 9. My shift started at p.m. Thanksgiving night. Manager Ricky, all of 29 and already balding from stress and poor decisions, gathered us in the break room on his 5th energy drink. Team, he said, eyes to wide, corporate wants this to be our biggest Black Friday ever. We've got doorbusters in electronics, home goods, and seasonal. We've got the Midnight Madness meat sale in the back coolers. I need everybody on their game. No breaks between midnight and 3 a.m. We okay? Nobody was okay. But nobody said so. He glanced at me. Miss Dot, he said, you'll be on spills, bathrooms, and trash runs. Radio if anything major happens. If anything major happens? I said. Sweetheart, on Black Friday major is the default setting. He flushed. Well, yeah, just do what you do. You're good at mopping. He meant it as a compliment. He really did. I had to take a slow breath and remind myself that this boy, who couldn't schedule coverage without crashing the whole store, had no idea I used to oversee logistics for 300 locations. That's the funny thing about people. They only see you in the uniform you're wearing in front of them. At 11:55 p.m., the doors looked like a zombie movie. People pressed against the glass, breath fogging, eyes locked on the displays inside. Giant posters screamed 70% off and doorbuster deals and limited quantities. Remember, Ricky shouted over the noise, no opening the doors before midnight. We got fined last year. An elderly cashier muttered. Last year they almost broke the glass. Fine me all you want. I like my bones intact. Then the clock struck 12. And the world rushed in. The sound hits you first. A roar. Like a wave of hungry locusts. Shopping carts crashing into each other. People yelling. Babies crying. The shriek of someone realizing they grabbed the last discounted pressure cooker. If you ever want to see the real soul of America, don't go to a museum. Go to a supermarket on Black Friday at midnight. I was stationed near the front with my mop bucket, watching the stampede surge toward electronics. Big screen TVs, laptops, game consoles, the usual holiday madness. But I wasn't really focused on the customers. I was watching the man standing by the customer service counter, scanning the store like it was his kingdom. Tan overcoat, designer scarf, perfectly cut salt and pepper hair, a laminated visitor badge that said Corporate Regional VP in bold letters, my old world, in my new one. His face stirred a distant memory, not because I knew him personally, but because I'd seen his type 1,000 times. The guy who FLIs in twice a year, shakes hands, spouts buzzwords, and FLIs back to his expense account. He checked his watch, pressed his lips together, frowned at the line at the registers like the laws of physics were personally offending him. One of the assistant managers, Kim, tried to bring him a coffee. Mr. Langford, can I get you? He waved her off without looking. I said almond milk. He snapped. This is clearly whole. I can smell the fat. I narrowed my eyes. Oh, I knew him. Not him, but the archetype. The kind of man who smiled for photos with employees in front of now hiring signs and then went back to headquarters to approve cost optimization plans that shaved 10 hours off every schedule. The kind of man who wrote emails about family culture from his vacation house while my real family ate canned soup because my pension evaporated. I pushed my mop bucket past him. He didn't see me. I was part of the scenery. The night spun itself into chaos. Somebody opened a box of plastic ornaments and they went rolling across the floor like landmines. Kids ran. People slipped. I hit it with the caution, wet floor sign and a prayer. At 12:35 a.m., there was a fight over the last 60-inch TV. At 12:42, a woman knocked over an entire display of cranberry juice. At 1:10, a man sliced his hand open trying to rip open a cardboard pallet without a box cutter. None of that surprised me. What did surprise me was where I saw Mr. Tan Overcoat a little after a.m. He was in the back hallway, near the receiving doors, talking to Ricky in low, intense tones. Most customers never see that hallway. It runs behind the meat department, dairy, and frozen foods, a strip of gray concrete, metal doors, and busted pallets. Employees see it all the time. Cleaners see it more. I was hauling a bag of trash toward the compactor when I heard my name. And don't worry about the overtime, Ricky, the man was saying. Just adjust it. Corporate will back you up. Ricky sounded panicked. But if they see the cameras, I paused. Cameras. I slowed my steps, letting the squeaky wheels on my cart cover the fact that I'd stopped just around the corner from them. I'm telling you, Overcoat said, voice lower now. Nobody at headquarters is going frame by frame through the footage of one store on one night. As long as the numbers look good, no one cares how you got them there. But the time cards edit them offline, he said. You've got access, don't you? That's why we pushed you for this role. You're not one of these sentimental types. You understand margins. My grip tightened on the trash bin handle. Adjust the overtime. Edit the time cards. Cameras. I'd heard this song before. Different lyrics. Same tune. I peeked around the corner just enough to see his face. Logan Langford, his badge said. Regional VP. Starline Division. That's when my stomach did a little flip. Starline, my old company. Starline had merged with Megamart Supreme 6 months before I started cleaning there. New logos, new policies, new synergies as they called them. I hadn't paid attention to the executives' names. Apparently I should have. Look, Ricky stammered. I just don't want to get in trouble, Mr. Langford. We're already short-staffed, and if they see we locked the doors 10 minutes early last week, take a breath, Langford said. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to shave non-productive time off the closing crew this week. Backdate it. And you're going to mark 2 of your full-timers as seasonal temps in the system for this pay period so their benefits don't hit our queue for numbers. My jaw clenched. He might as well have been reading from the same handbook Chad used when he helped frame me. Benefit manipulation, time card fraud, corporate pressure disguised as tips. That's not exactly allowed, Ricky whispered. Langford stepped closer. You want to be a store manager next year? He asked quietly. Because I can make that happen. But I can also make sure your name never shows up on a promotion list again. You understand? Fear radiated off Ricky like heat. Yes, sir, he said finally. I understand. Good man, Langford said, clapping him on the shoulder. You're a team player. They moved past me and out toward the front. I ducked my head and pretended to be fascinated by a particularly stubborn gum stain on the floor. They didn't see me. They never do. But I saw them, and I heard everything. Now, I could have done what most people do in my position, mutter under my breath, complain in the break room, and let it go. After all, I was just the cleaner, not my circus, not my monkeys. Except it was my circus. Different tent, same clowns. I'd been framed once before by a man who knew how to make bad numbers look good and hang the fallout around someone else's neck. I'd lived the consequences, the ruined pension, the ruined reputation, the HR whispers. I knew exactly what Langford was engineering. He was setting Ricky up as a fall guy. If anything blew up, if the Department of Labor came sniffing around, if someone complained about unpaid overtime, if someone lawyered up corporate would say, we're shocked, that this rogue manager violated our policies, they'd fire him. Issue a bland statement. Maybe promote Langford for swift action. I leaned against my mop, listening to the furious drum of my own heartbeat. And then, over the loudspeaker, the store's cheerful announcement system chirped. Attention Megamart shoppers, don't miss our one-night-only Black Friday bonus savings in electronics. People cheered. I smiled slowly. Black Friday, one of the few nights of the year when everybody expects chaos. When cameras are rolling, when the store is packed, when corporate eyes are glued to sales figures, not little people like me. And when a certain regional VP was in the building, cozying up to a scheme that sounded awfully similar to the one that had sent my career into the ground. I looked down at my mop bucket. I think we're in the wrong department tonight, I told it. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about women my age. We look like we're just trying to get through the day. We look like we've surrendered. Like we're invisible and tired and done. We are tired. God, we're tired. But some of us, we're also collecting information. We're listening. We're remembering everything no one is careful enough to hide from the help. And on certain nights, under certain fluorescent lights, with the wrong man in our sights, we stop cleaning up messes and start making a few. I left the trash bag where it was, wiped my hands on my vest, and headed toward the front of the store. There were cameras to locate, a frightened manager to talk to, and a certain Mr. Langford, Regional VP, Starline Division, who had absolutely no idea that the cleaner on aisle 7 used to design the very systems he was abusing. Oh, sweetheart, he was about to find out. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to stand in the middle of a Black Friday riot, holding a mop and a secret that could blow up a regional VP's career, let me save you the suspense. It feels excellent, and also like heartburn. I didn't go after Langford first. Men like him are used to conflict. It just makes them careful. No. I went after Ricky. He was in the tiny office off the break room at around 3:30 a.m., staring at the schedule screen like it had betrayed him personally. His tie was crooked, and he had that hollow-eyed look you only see on new parents and retail managers in Q4. I knocked once and stepped in. He jumped. Oh, Miss Dot, I'm kinda busy right now, I know, I said. Busy becoming a co-conspirator. His face went white so fast I thought he might faint. I don't, what do you mean? Sit down, I said. I'm old and my feet hurt, so you sitting helps me feel powerful. He sat. I closed the door. About half an hour ago, I said. I was in the back hall hauling trash to the compactor. You and Mr. Almond Milk were having a very interesting conversation about overtime and reclassifying full-timers as seasonal. He froze. You heard that? Every word, I said. Also, you both talk too loud for men committing wage theft. It's not wage theft, he blurted. It's just adjusting scheduled hours to match productivity. And sweetheart, I interrupted gently. I was running operations before you were born. I know exactly what it is. It's illegal. And when it blows up, corporate's going to fire the scared store manager who pushed the buttons and regretfully terminate him in a carefully worded memo. He swallowed so hard I heard it. Look, he said, voice shaking. You don't understand the pressure. They cut our labor budget 12% this quarter and then doubled our promo calendar. My district manager's breathing down my neck. Langford says if we can show savings, I'll be on the short list for district in a year. If I don't, you'll be labeled not leadership material. I finished. I do understand. I just spent 2 years living the sequel. He blinked. What do you mean? I pulled the cracked plastic chair closer and sat. Ricky, I said, what do you know about Starline Markets? He furrowed his brow. Weren't they the chain Megamart bought last year? East Coast? I know they did some synergy alignment stuff with our back end. Cute, I said. I worked there. 30 years. Ended as VP of operations. His jaw dropped. You were a VP? He squeaked. Here. Not here, I said, but in a very similar circus. I oversaw the kind of numbers you're drowning in right now. And I also got framed for anomalies in vendor contracts when a golden boy decided he wanted my job. Signatures forged. Systems accessed. HR meetings. You're living a rerun. Different channel. Same plot. He sank back. Why are you telling me this? He whispered. Because I don't like sequels, I said. And because I don't want to mop the floor under your feet while they walk you out later. His eyes filled with tears. He tried to blink away. Men like Ricky don't get space to cry. They get performance reviews and a pat on the back as the ship sinks. I can't say no to him, he said. He's corporate. He's got the power to promote me or bury me. Oh, sweetheart, I said. That's where you're wrong. He thinks he has the power because you're playing on his field. We're going to change the field. He stared at me. Yes, I said. Unless you want to go this alone, in which case I'll just sit in the break room and watch the fireworks on the security feed. He hesitated. What do you want me to do? He asked. I smiled. First, I said, you're going to do exactly what he said. His eyes widened in horror. But relax, I said. You're going to do what he said, but in a way that leaves a footprint big enough to kick him in the teeth later. He wants you to adjust time cards offline? Fine. You're going to ask him to text or email you clear instructions so you don't mess it up. You're going to stand under a camera when you do it. And you're not going to delete a damn thing. That's he'll no, he won't, I said. Because men like Langford think everyone around them is stupid. When you say, can you send me that in writing so I don't get it wrong? He'll think, good boy, doesn't want to screw up my orders. He won't think, this boy is preserving evidence for when the Department of Labor eats me for breakfast. Ricky stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Why are you helping me? He whispered. Because someone like him used someone like you to ruin my life once, I said calmly. And because I'm bored of just cleaning up other people's messes. I'd like to prevent one for a change. He let out a shaky breath. And if this goes wrong? He asked. Then you'll be fired, I said. But you're already on that track if you obey him blindly. At least this way, you're fired with receipts and a decent wrongful termination case. Maybe even whistleblower protection, if we play it right. He rubbed his face. I'm going to throw up, he said. Do it in a trash can, I said. I just mopped. Here's the advantage of being a cleaner in a big box store. You know where all the cameras are. I'd spent months pushing my cart down those aisles, dusting the tops of the domes, listening to security guards complain about all this footage corporate's never gonna look at. They were right, mostly. But sometimes when something broke, someone at HQ would dig through the archives, rewind and replay until they found what they wanted to see. I intended to give them something worth replaying. Around 4:15 a.m., the worst of the stampede had slowed. The store hummed at a dull roar instead of a scream. People were lining up at registers, faces slack with exhaustion and buyer's remorse. I radioed Ricky. Hey, boss, I said in my cheeriest corporate voice. You got a second? His voice crackled back, unsteady but game. Yeah, Miss Dot, what's up? You said we needed to double-check some back-office stuff before shift change, I said. Maybe by the HR kiosk. I want to make sure I clock out right. Code enough. He knew what I was doing. The HR kiosk sat right under a discreet little dome camera. I'd watched enough grainy training videos to know the angle. Ricky arrived, pale but determined. 2 minutes later, so did Langford, striding down the main aisle like a man inspecting his yacht. There you are, he said. How we looking on labor, Ricky? Ricky swallowed. Better, he said. But I wanted to make sure I don't mess up what you told me earlier. Could you maybe text me the exact instructions for the overtime and the seasonal flags? I don't want to do it wrong and have it blow back on you. I almost applauded. Langford's ego visibly preened. That's very conscientious of you, he said. Fine, give me your number. Ricky rattled it off. Langford pulled out his phone, thumbs moving. A second later, Ricky's phone buzzed. Read it back to me, Langford said. So we're on the same page. Ricky glanced at the screen, voice faint. Tonight, cut non-productive OT from closing crew. Backdate if needed. Move Gonzalez and Patel to seasonal status and system for this pay period. Runtime edits offline, not through main system. No one checks individual shift details. Trust me, LL. It was all I could do not to cackle. We were under a camera. Ricky's phone was in frame. Langford's phone too. His smug face as he said, perfect. That's exactly what I meant. You seer, Ricky said. Oh, and one more thing, Langford added. Don't mention this to anyone. No emails. No paper trail. If someone asks, you just say you're following standard productivity protocols. Got it? Got it, Ricky said. I rolled my mop past them like I hadn't heard a thing. My phone buzzed. It was Ricky. He'd forwarded the text to me, just like we'd agreed in the office. I glanced at it while pretending to study a scuff on the tile. It was all there, written, time-stamped, from a corporate number. Beautiful. Now, was this enough to bring down a regional VP by breakfast? No, but it was enough to start pulling threads. And I knew exactly which thread to tug first. By the time my shift ended at AM, the sky was turning that dirty gray color that looks like dishwater. My feet throbbed, my back ached, and my brain was trying to file everything under future lawsuit while my body just wanted a nap. I walked home because I'd sold my car after Starline cut my pension and Megamart didn't pay enough for wheels, as Lisa so charmingly put it. My apartment was small but clean, second floor, view of a parking lot, smelled faintly of the neighbor's fried chicken and my own lavender detergent. I kicked off my shoes, made coffee that didn't taste like burnt regret, and pulled my old laptop out of the drawer. It wheezed like a smoker when it started, but it started. I opened an ancient email account I hadn't touched in a year. Hundreds of unread messages, mostly newsletters and lawyers I didn't pay. I searched for Starline and Megamart. The merger announcement popped up. New leadership structure, new titles. A lot of words that meant we fired people and gave their jobs to fewer, more overwhelmed people with bigger titles. One name jumped out at me. Caroline Shu, Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer, Megamart Starline Group. I knew Caroline, not well, but enough. She'd been in legal at Starline when I was still in operations. Smart, quiet, the kind of woman who remembered details and noticed everything. At the time, she was buried 3 levels down. Apparently she'd clawed her way up. Good for her. I composed a new email. Subject: Former Starline VP with information on current labor practices. Caroline, you may remember me, or at least my name. I'm Dorothy Parker, former VP of Operations, Starline Markets. 2 years ago, internal investigations found vendor contract anomalies attached to my access. I was eventually cleared, but not before my role was eliminated and my pension revised. I now work as hourly cleaning staff at a Megamart Supreme location, store number 482, Aurora, Colorado. Last night, Black Friday overnight, I personally overheard and then observed the following. Regional VP Logan Langford instructing store manager to alter time cards to remove overtime already worked. Same VP pressuring manager to reclassify full-time employees as seasonal in the system for this pay period to avoid benefits impact. Same VP explicitly directing manager to run edits offline so they would not be visible in the main system and no one checks individual shift details. I have the exact text message sent from Langford's corporate phone to the manager's device. Knowledge of the time and camera location under which he dictated those instructions. Given my history with Starline and the similarities in behavior patterns, I believe this may be part of a broader practice that exposes the company to significant legal and regulatory risk. Department of Labor, wage theft statutes, benefit fraud, etc. I am willing to provide a detailed written statement and identify corroborating witnesses, including the terrified manager, under the protection of the company's whistleblower and non-retaliation policies, if those still exist in practice and not just in the Code of Conduct PDF. If you're interested in not watching another regional scandal become a national headline, I suggest we speak soon. Dorothy M. Parker, former VP Ops, Starline current night cleaner, Megamart number 482. I read it twice, cut out half the swear words, left in just enough edge to shake her awake. Then I hit send. 20 minutes later, I fully expected my email to disappear into the corporate abyss, nestled between a phishing attempt and a coupon for toner. Instead, my laptop pinged. New message from Caroline Shu. Dorothy, I remember you. I also remember thinking at the time that your case didn't add up. Thank you for reaching out. Please do not confront Mr. Langford directly. Do not forward that message to anyone else, and do not delete anything from your phone. I am initiating an internal investigation and escalating this to our external employment counsel. Also, as of this email, consider yourself covered by the company's whistleblower policy and legal hold. You are not to be disciplined or terminated in connection with this matter without my written consent. I'd like to schedule a call with you today, off hours. Please send a number and time that works. And Dorothy, I am very sorry for what happened to you before. I can't change it, but I may be able to prevent it from happening again. Caroline. I sat back. For the first time in a long time, I felt something unfamiliar. Not rage, not exhaustion, a flicker of being believed. I typed back my number, suggested noon, then spent the rest of the morning half dozing, half rehearsing what I'd say. Around 11, my phone buzzed again. Not Caroline this time. Message from unknown number. Heard you're working my old stomping grounds, Dorothy. Megamart, huh? Small world. C.B. My heart tripped. C.B. Chad Benson. My former protégé. The boy I'd lifted up and who'd happily stepped on my fingers as he climbed over me. What the hell was he doing texting me now? I typed back. New number. Lose it. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Just wanted to say no hard feelings. Things worked out for the best. You wouldn't have enjoyed this new environment. I stared at the screen. That was textbook Chad, honeyed, condescending, and about 3 inches away from "you're welcome." But that phrase, "this new environment," stuck in my head. I checked his LinkedIn out of morbid curiosity. He was now Chief Transformation Officer for Megamart Starline Group. Transformation. I laughed out loud. Of course you are. I told the ceiling. You transform living beings into debris. His job description was corporate poetry about driving efficiency, harmonizing systems, and optimizing labor utilization. It might as well have said expert at getting people like Langford to quietly break the law in ways that make shareholders smile. The pattern clicked harder. This wasn't just one overzealous regional VP. This was culture, and culture always has a face at the top. At noon, Caroline called. Her voice was calm, measured, but there was steel under it. "First, Dorothy," she said, "thank you. Second, tell me everything from the beginning. Don't edit for my feelings." So I did. I told her about the hallway conversation, about the second one under the camera, about the text, about Ricky's panic, about my history with Starline, about Chad, about the familiar stink of unofficial policies. She listened without interrupting, only occasionally murmuring, "What time was that?" or "Which camera was that under?" When I finished, she let out a long breath. "Okay," she said, "here's where we are. You are not the first person to raise vague concerns about timecard optimization in Logan's region, but you are the first one to hand me a concrete directive that violates not only company policy but federal law. So we have a trend," I said. "We have a hell of a lot more than a trend," she said. "We have a potential systemic issue. And if you're right about where this is coming from, the rot isn't at the store level." She didn't say Chad's name. She didn't have to. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "First, I'm having our security team pull all relevant footage from your store starting 3 hours before that hallway conversation," she said. "We'll lock it under legal hold so nobody accidentally overwrites it. Second, our outside counsel is drafting document preservation notices for Langford's emails, texts, and Teams chats. Third, I'm going to recommend that he take some personal time while we look into this. And when he calls his friends and screams," I asked. "I've been chief compliance officer for years," she said dryly. "Men like him screaming is my white noise." I liked her more by the minute. "Dorothy," she added, "I need to ask you something more sensitive. Would you be willing to put your history with Starline, and what you suspect about how your own case was handled, into a formal statement as well? You looking to open that can of worms?" I asked. "It's been 2 years. I'm looking to understand whether what happened to you was an isolated injustice or the early sign of a pattern we ignored," she said. "If there was collusion or misconduct around your case, that matters. Legally, ethically, and personally." I thought of the HR folder, the glossy termination letter, the way my lawyer had sighed and said, "We can win in court eventually, but you'll be broke first." "I'll write it," I said. "Names, dates, everything." "Good," she said. "And Dorothy?" "Yes, if anyone at your store treats you differently, cuts your hours, writes you up, starts documenting fake performance issues, you call me. Immediately, with names. That's retaliation, and it will not stand." I sat there in my little kitchen, staring at the plant I'd kept alive by sheer spite, and realized something. I had backup. Not some knight in shining armor, not the FBI, not a magic wand, just a woman with a title, a spine, and access to email servers. Sometimes that's enough. We hung up. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Ricky. "Did you talk to someone? Langford just sent out an email flying home early to handle strategic priorities. District Emger is freaking out." I smiled. "Relax. Just follow policy to the letter for the next few days. No more adjustments. If anyone tries to pressure you, tell them to put it in writing. Then take a screenshot. 3 dots. Miss Dot. Are we in trouble?" I thought about it. "No, sweetheart. They are. We're just holding the mop when the pipe bursts. Internal investigations take time. Corporate machines don't turn on a dime. They grind slowly, like an old trash compactor deciding whether to chew or spit." But things moved faster than I expected. On Monday, there was a sign on the manager's office door. "Regional visit canceled to be rescheduled." People whispered. Nobody said why. On Wednesday, a man and a woman in suits came through the front door and went straight to the back with Ricky. Their badges said Corporate Audit and Employment Council. On Thursday, Caroline herself showed up. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She'd always been the quiet lawyer in the back row of meetings, taking notes while executives argued. Now she walked like she owned her space, black blazer sharp enough to cut glass. She found me in all 7. "Dorothy?" she asked. "In the flesh," I said, holding my mop like a scepter. She smiled, tired but genuine. "I wanted to thank you in person," she said. "Also to tell you something before the rumor mill gets there." "Oh, Good, I said. I do love spoilers. She lowered her voice. We found patterns similar to what you described in 3 other stores, she said. Same kind of off-system edits. Same seasonal games. In every case, the pressure traced back up through district to Logan. And above him. She paused. I raised a brow. Let me guess, I said. Our old friend, the chief transformation officer? Her mouth quirked. We're still gathering evidence, she said carefully. But, yes, there are concerning communications. Enough that the board has engaged external investigators. This is going well above my pay grade now. How's his temperature? I asked. Boiling yet? She huffed. You might see some developments in the next few weeks, she said. In the meantime, you're going to hear rumors. People will try to guess who talked. You are under no obligation to raise your hand. If you feel unsafe, call me. And if you ever decide you want something more formal, in terms of recognition or restitution, we can discuss that. I don't need a medal, I said. I need them to stop grinding people up. We're working on it, she said. Slowly, imperfectly, but we are. As she turned to go, I stopped her. Caroline, I said. One question. Yes, you said my case might have been an early sign you all missed, I said. You dig anything up on that yet? She met my eyes. We did, she said. It's not ready for daylight, but I can tell you this. The narrative that you were at fault does not match the internal communications we're reviewing. At all. My throat tightened. As we keep entangling this, she added, I will circle back. You deserve to know. Thank you, I managed. She nodded and walked away, already on her phone, already juggling a dozen fires. I watched her go, heart pounding. 2 years ago, I'd walked out of a Starline building with a cardboard box and a letter that might as well have said, congratulations, you're the villain now. Now, in a megamart all that smelled like bleach and laundry soap, someone with power had just told me no you weren't. I leaned on my mop. For a second, my eyes stung. Then the intercom crackled. Attention Megamart associates, a voice said. Quick huddle at the front. This is not a drill. Ricky's voice came over our handhelds. Front of store in 5 guys, he said. Corporate wants to make an announcement. I straightened. Announcements in retail rarely mean anything good. But this time, I had a feeling. I parked my mop, wiped my hands on my vest, and walked toward the front, weaving through customers and carts and displays of discounted cereal. Employees gathered near register 12. Cashiers, stockers, bakery staff, night crew blinking in the fluorescent glare. Caroline stood near customer service, next to a TV monitor usually used for looped promos. Today, it showed the Megamart Starline logo and the words, Company-wide Town Hall Live. A corporate face appeared on the screen, the CEO. I'd seen him in press releases. He launched into a carefully worded statement about upholding our values, taking allegations seriously, and an ongoing independent review of certain labor practices in select regions. Then he said the magic words, effective immediately. Logan Langford has been placed on leave pending the outcome of this investigation, and Chief Transformation Officer Chad Benson has resigned to pursue other opportunities. The room rippled. Resigned? I murmured. That's corporate Ford jumped off the boat before we could throw you. Nobody knew I had just watched my old protégé lose his golden lanyard in real time. I smiled, small and sharp. One down. One very important conversation still to come. Because if you think I wasn't going to reach out and have a little chat with the man who'd texted me no hard feelings earlier that week, oh sweetheart, you don't know me at all. The CEO finished his polished little speech. The monitor went dark. Employees murmured, half confused, half delighted in that guilty way people get when someone further up the food chain finally trips. Ricky exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 3 days. I just thought, good. Now we're at the fun part. The thing about corporate resignations to pursue other opportunities is that they're never as clean as the announcement makes them sound. Somewhere in a very fancy house, Chad Benson was staring at a laptop, realizing the career he'd built by balancing on other people's necks had just lost its ladder. A few hours after the town hall, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Hope you're happy. I smirked. Morning to you too, Chad. Coffee not hitting right today? 3 dots. Then, don't play dumb, Dorothy. I know you talked to someone. Compliance doesn't dig that deep without a push. I let that sit for a second. Funny, you didn't care about someone talking when it was me in the crosshairs. A full minute passed. 2. Then, things were complicated back then. The board needed a head to roll. You were already close to retirement. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. There it was, the justification. The neat little box he kept the whole mess in so he could sleep at night. Translation: you were expendable. I wasn't. No response. So I sent another. So, Chief Transformation Officer, you transformed so hard they escorted you out, huh? This time he called. I let it ring twice, then answered. You're enjoying this, he said, skipping hello. Absolutely, I said. I highly recommend it. 5 out of 5 stars on the revenge scale. Would do again. His voice was tight, brittle. They're overreacting, he said. It was just aggressive optimization. Every chain does it. You know that. You wrote half those policies. I wrote efficiency guidelines, I said. I did not write go commit wage theft and hope nobody notices. That part was all you and your little disciples. Langford went rogue, he snapped. I never told him to break the law. Did you tell him to hit labor targets at any cost? I asked. Did you tell him promotions depended on creative solutions? Did you tell him the board didn't want excuses, just numbers? Silence. Culture, Chad, I said. You don't have to email crimes when you marinate people in them. He made a frustrated noise. You don't understand the pressure at that level, Dorothy, he said. The board wants share price. I finished. I know. I've sat in those rooms. The difference between us is that when they told me to cook the numbers, I turned down the stove. You were knave, he said. I adapted. And now you're unemployed, I said sweetly. How's that adaptation working out? He breathed hard for a second, then shifted tactics. Look, he said, we can tear each other apart all day, but that won't change anything. I'm calling because if this spirals, it'll hurt a lot of people. Not just me and Langford, district managers, store managers, regular employees. The regular employees are already hurting, I said. That's the point. They're the ones whose paychecks got trimmed while you bought another watch. I'm saying, he pressed, maybe this doesn't have to go nuclear. Maybe you could soften your statement. Make it look more like Logan misunderstood expectations. I had to put him on speaker so I could pinch the bridge of my nose with both hands. You really don't get it, I said. This isn't my lawsuit. This is the company's, the government's, maybe a class action or threes. My statement is a footnote. I'm not the one holding the detonator. You have more power than you think, he said. Oh, I know, I said. That's why I'm not using it to save you. Silence again. The petty part of me enjoyed it. You're not a saint, Dorothy, he said quietly. You trained me. You taught me half of what I know. Yes, I said. I taught you how to run lean operations and respect the people doing the work. You took the first half and set fire to the second. I leaned back in my chair. You want my advice? I asked. He barked a bitter laugh. Not really, but you'll give it anyway. Cooperate, I said, with whoever comes knocking. Internal investigators, Department of Labor attorneys. Don't lie. Don't spin. Give them the emails you thought you deleted. Give them the names. You might salvage a piece of your future, or at least your conscience, if you still have one buried somewhere under all that gel. You want me to snitch, he said. I want you to finally be useful, I said. And as a bonus, maybe every store manager who's been quietly forced to cheat their own people gets a fair shake this time. He went quiet. You're really not going to help me, he said, more statement than question. I am helping you, I said. This is the first real help you've ever gotten from me. I'm telling you the truth, and I'm not sugarcoating it. That's more than you ever gave me. He inhaled sharply. I didn't mean for them to go after your pension, he blurted. That part, that went further than I wanted. The board needed someone to blame, I said. You handed them my name instead of your own. You don't get to rewrite that now. I heard him swallow. If I cooperate, he said slowly, will you testify honestly? Not just the worst? If you tell the whole truth, I said, I will too. You weren't all monster. You did some things right way back when. I'll say that if it matters. He let out a long breath. I miss when you were just the lady who yelled at me for bad inventory reports, he said. I miss when you were salvageable, I said. We hung up, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like his victim. I felt like his verdict. 3 weeks later, I got a FedEx envelope with a return address that screamed expensive law firm. Inside, a letter from Megamart Starline's outside counsel, a draft settlement and acknowledgement agreement, and a separate note in Caroline's handwriting. Dorothy, I told you I'd circle back. The independent review concluded that your departure from Starline was, in legal terms, materially tainted by process irregularities. In human terms, you got screwed. The board has authorized us to fully restore your pension as if it had never been reduced. Issue a formal internal exoneration and correction to your personnel file. Provide a public-facing statement if you consent clarifying that you were not personally responsible for the vendor irregularities. Offer a monetary settlement in recognition of the distress and reputational harm you suffered. I know this does not give you back the last 2 years, but I hope it is a start. Please review the attached draft. Note the proposed confidentiality language. I suspect you'll have thoughts. See? Oh, I had thoughts. The money was not small. Enough to pay off my daughter's lingering debts, secure my own retirement properly, maybe even get a car that didn't squeak. The exoneration mattered more. The confidentiality clause, though, that was the kicker. The draft said, in that polite legal way, that I would agree not to publicly disparage the company, its executives, or its practices, and not to discuss the specific terms of this settlement or underlying allegations without prior written approval. Absolutely not. I called Caroline. First of all, I said, thank you. Second, your lawyers wrote a very pretty cage here. She laughed softly. I thought you might feel that way, she said. What would make it acceptable to you? I'll keep the dollar figures private, I said. You don't need my bank account on a billboard, but I will not sign something that says I can't tell my own story in broad strokes. I won't agree that I can never say, I worked at a chain. Someone framed me. Years later, they admitted they were wrong. Here's what I learned. That's reasonable, she said. We can narrow it, limit it to trade secrets, proprietary information, and specific names, and you can keep your no disparagement clause for current individuals, I said. I don't need to go online and list every idiot I ever worked with, but I want the right to criticize systems and practices that hurt people. Otherwise, what's the point of surviving this? I'll take that back to them, she said. Privately, I think it makes sense. The company's trying to show it's listening. Silencing you would send the opposite message. Good, I said. Because if they don't like it, they can keep the check and I'll tell the story with my own name and every ugly detail anyway. You're a terrifying woman, she said. I keep hearing that lately, I replied. Maybe it's my new brand. She called back 2 days later. The board approved your revisions, she said. We've slimmed the confidentiality language. You can talk about your experience in general, as long as you don't disclose internal financials, specific negotiation points, or unredacted names of lower-level employees. Executives are fair game if they're already public, so I can say, Chad was an idiot, I said, but not Chad's password was 1234 and here's his social security number. Exactly, she said, amusement in her voice. Then we have a deal, I said. I signed. The money hit my account a week later. I stared at the numbers for a long time. Then I closed the app and went to work my shift at Megamart anyway. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to, because I liked the rhythm, the gossip, the way the night shift looked out for each other, and because it reminded me where the consequences of executive decisions land, right on the sticky tiles Miss Dot has to scrub. Things changed at store number 482, not overnight. This isn't a movie. Nobody rolled out a red carpet and threw rose petals at our feet, but we started seeing posted reminders about overtime policies. HR did surprise audits. New regional folks came through asking employees, not just managers, how things were done. Ricky got called to headquarters for a 3-day leadership and ethics in store management training. He came back with a new name tag that said store director instead of interim manager and a look of stunned disbelief. They apologized to me, he told me in the break room, spilling crumbs from his sandwich. Said I'd been placed in a difficult position by inappropriate expectations from senior leadership and they were grateful I cooperated. Imagine that, I said. A manager not being thrown under the bus for once. Mark your calendar. It's historic. He grinned. You did this, Miss Dot, he said. No, I said. Langford and Chad did this. I just pointed and said, look, the emperor's naked and also stealing from everyone. He laughed so hard he choked on his chips. A few weeks later, Caroline called again. We're piloting a new internal program, she said. Independent store truth tellers, for lack of a better word. Experienced people on the ground who can flag ethical issues early. I know you already have 2 jobs, but would you consider a third? You want to pay me to keep doing what I already do for free? I asked. Complain loudly and notice everything? In a more structured way, yes, she said. You'd still be a cleaner on paper, but with a confidential reporting line, some extra training, and a stipend. Consider it institutionalized nosiness. I thought about it. Fine, I said. But you're going to have to call it something fancier than snitch. How about operational integrity liaison? She suggested. Oh, that's beautiful, I said. Put it on a business card. I'll use it as a coaster. Which brings us here, to you, to this camera propped up on a stack of paper towels in my little apartment, to a ring light my granddaughter insisted I needed. Nana, you can't look like a ghost on YouTube, and to this story leaving my mouth and landing in your ears. Somewhere along the line, someone suggested I film it. People need to hear this, Lisa said. Not the corporate legalese. The real version. From a woman who lived it, who didn't just get knocked down and stay there. So now, after my shift, after my operational integrity liaison emails, after my blood pressure pills and my nightly tea, I sit down and talk to you. I tell you how a 67-year-old cleaner in a vest and non-slip shoes helped expose a pattern of wage theft in one of the biggest supermarket chains in America. I tell you how the woman who was blamed for other people's fraud got an apology in writing. I tell you how the protégé who stepped on my back to climb the ladder eventually slipped on his own oil slick. I tell you how a nervous store manager named Ricky learned that following orders is not a defense when the orders are illegal, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can say is, "Can you put that in writing?" And I tell you, more than anything, that you are not powerless just because you're not in the boardroom. The woman cleaning the break room hears more truth than the CEO. The cashier sees more lies than the compliance department. The overnight stalker knows which corners get cut when nobody with a clipboard is watching. We are not unskilled. We are strategically underestimated. There's a difference. Maybe you're watching this from a job you're overqualified for. Maybe you used to be someone important, and now you're bagging groceries, cleaning offices, or answering phones while people half your age explain things you invented back to you like you're slow. Maybe you've been blamed for something you didn't do. Maybe your pension's gone. Maybe your kid made choices that broke your heart and your bank account. Maybe you're tired. I am too. But here's what I've learned. Pushing a mop through fluorescent chaos and sitting in conference rooms wearing hand-me-down blazers, you still know what you know. They can take your title off the door. They can't unteach you 30 years of expertise. You see more from the floor than they ever will from the corner office. Use that. You are allowed to collect evidence, notes, dates, texts, patterns. You're not paranoid. You're paying attention in a system that counts on your silence. Revenge doesn't have to be dramatic to be real. Sometimes it's a carefully forwarded email, a statement to the right person, a refusal to sign a gag order. You are not too old to be dangerous. In fact, your age is an asset. You've seen enough storms to know when the air pressure is dropping. So if you're waiting for permission to stop swallowing everything that hurts you, consider this your permission slip. You're not done. You might have a mop in your hand, a badge on your shirt, or a name tag that doesn't match the life you lived before. But you're still you. You can still look a man like Logan Langford dead in the eye and think, I know what you're doing. And I might not stop you today, but I will not forget. And I will not stay quiet forever. And if, one Black Friday, you just happen to be standing under the right camera when the right man says the wrong thing, well, call someone like Caroline. Or call me. I enjoy a good cleanup, especially when it's not my mess. So that's my story. My name is Dorothy Mae Parker. I'm 67. I clean floors. I blow whistles. I ruin the weeks of men who think older women are invisible. If you're watching this, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me where you work and how long they've been underestimating you. Then go back in there and be the reason the wrong people start to worry.